Um, Hello everyone. This is the special review session for DE20. We finished the course. It's an 8-week course which we have finished, and this is a special review session for all the participants, which is going to be used to discuss like just some of the I'll discuss some of the questions from the entire course. And if you have any doubts, we can discuss that. And, anything else basically for help with the course in general or help with, the exam part. So just a heads up before we get started that a lot of people have a lot of administrative type of questions a lot of times when it comes to the exam. And the problem is that I can't really help you with administrative type of questions because I don't really have any kind of involvement or say, or for that matter even knowledge about the administrative side of things. So I'm really sorry, but that is just how it is. Sorry, I'll just adjust a little bit. Yeah, so that is the main problem with the administrative type of questions. And if you have administrative type of questions, I would suggest that you get in touch with the NPTEL team and address it to them, or you can also post it in the discussion forum, and you could get an answer from the content team, which actually is setting the exam, things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the administrative side of things. Just check this video. Right. Yeah. So that's like the administrative side of things. But apart from that, just the course content itself and the overall understanding of the course, and maybe you tried applying something from the course and you have some questions with that, or you have some questions from the assignments, any of the assignments which you might want to discuss, those you can definitely ask me in this session, and I'll try to answer as best as I can. So we've just started, and I'll just give a few minutes so that people can log in, because we only just started basically. And well, what I will do, at least from my part for this class, is that I've got a just prepared a sample question paper. Not really, don't really take this as a sample paper for your exam, because like I said, I really have no idea what you will get in the exam or what kind of questions you'll get in the exam either. But just for the review purpose, just for the purpose of going over the entire course, I have just prepared a sample question, but I may deviate a lot from the sample question paper. I may actually take a tangent and discuss some other concepts maybe we had in the course and things like that. So this is just a basic outline roadmap of what we will do today. And like I said earlier, apart from that, if you have any other questions, anything else you want to discuss, you are totally welcome to do that. Okay. All right. So I'll just give like 5-10 minutes for people to join, and then we'll get started. All right. So I'll share the screen. So you can just look at the first question in the meantime. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah. So I'll just share the rest of the questions as we kind of go forward. But this is the first question. you may have encountered or you may not have encountered some of these questions before. And even if you have, the real question is how much of it you actually remember. So we'll go over these questions, and also I realized that the week 8 final quiz, the final assignment, we never actually discussed in class, because in the last class, the assignment due date was still, it was still remaining. That's why we didn't discuss it. So we still have week 8 assignment also, if you want to discuss it. So after this, we could discuss the week 8 assignment also, and otherwise we can just go ahead and uh, just discuss anything from the entire syllabus ad hoc as it comes. Okay, so I'll just pause it here. I mean, I'll just take a minute or two to allow others to join in, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Okay, so let's start. So I had shared this, the what do you call it? The question paper, the samples. But I thought it might be a good idea to, for starters, to just go over the whole in the course flow itself. I'm not sharing anything very special, just sharing the mm, the NPTEL, the thing in the course. Okay, just for something for reference. So let's just look at the the overall flow of the course. What did we do in this course? Because I didn't feel like diving right into the questions might be a bit of an overkill. So first of all, we started with a very interesting type of design and a very interesting design approach, which was this Jaipur foot, which Professor Chakravarti talked about. And this is an innovation by somebody who was not a designer, who was not even an engineer. Right? That was the most important aspect of this particular design, that it was designed and crafted and conceived by somebody who was neither a designer not an engineer. So the whole point of this discussion, the whole, not point, but you could say the crux of this discussion on the Jaipur foot was mainly centered around understanding the whole approach behind it, how much effort went into it, and how much thought went into it, and how that one design was able to achieve its goal of not just providing the users with a prosthetic limb, but basically giving them their life back. Because especially with a lot of the people who come with a lot of requirements for prosthetics, many of them are completely like stripped off of their livelihood, and in that way many of them just literally they are somehow carrying on with their lives, but they're not able to do the things that matter the most to them. So by giving them this prosthetic limb, they didn't just package it as a product. That was, I think, the one of the important takeaways from this first module, that it was not just a product, it was a social innovation, and the innovation had the power to change the complete livelihoods and lives of all the people who came for prosthetics, and the people who designed the foot and created that whole method of giving the people prosthetics. They understood their target audience so well, in terms of not just their buying capacity and not just their requirements of a prosthetic, but their requirements in lives. See, there's a difference between understanding your target customers requirements in terms of the product, in terms of the medtech device, and understanding the requirements from life itself. So this Jaipur foot was a very brilliant innovation. It has been talked about a lot. It is, I think, it has won some design award also, and it was very early in its, innovation, in the sense that it was the only innovation of its kind when it came out many years ago. So it's world famous, really. Time magazine has an article on it. So what they did was to understand that these people, it's not just that they have lost a limb, but they their entire livelihood depends on them being able to move freely, on them being able to work. So some of them were rickshaw pullers, or they used to work in the fields, or they did some other kind of work, and they were not able to do that work anymore. So that meant that they did not have money to buy anything, right? They were completely, because of course this innovation, at the time when this innovation came out, it was still new, and they knew that these people have been sort of carrying on without a prosthetic limb for some time, and Many times these people are the main, bread earner in the family. So they don't have, like, they're able to make ends meet somehow, but they don't have money to buy a prosthetic limb. That was the biggest, the biggest problem in the whole design and the product itself. And many times in life, many people want to make a change. They want to come up with a new product which will be good for people, like people who have that requirement, but they don't have the money to pay for it. And in that sense, the Jaipur foot is a very, very big lesson or case study for any such kind of an innovation. So I think in one of the classes, some participant had asked me that, how do we, each module gives a different design philosophy essentially. So, how do we decide which design philosophy to apply in our product design? So for the first module, where we're talking about the Jaipur foot, that part especially, I would say that, this is an example of a design for an entire society, for an entire, category of people. And it's the best, one of the best case studies for when you want to design a product which people don't have the money to buy, right? So what they did, of course, was they came up with so much of innovation in terms of materials, in terms of the method, and in terms of comfort for the user, that it was a classic innovation. So what happened was that, they realized that the materials which are traditionally used in prosthetics are too expensive, and there's no way you can actually, prepare that limb in such a short time. So they came up with such low cost materials that they were able to actually reduce the cost of the prosthetic a lot, like a lot. So if you try to get any kind of a prosthetic, outside India, that would be like maybe 50 times of what the cost of manufacturing this is. So in that term, the innovation in terms of materials and methodology was landmark, right? That is the first thing. Second thing, they were able to get other, non-profits and government and everyone involved. So the cost of the foot is borne by them. And the people who get the prosthetic, they don't have to pay for the limb. That was the second thing. Third thing was that they made the whole process so, it happen in such a short time that the person can walk in the morning, give their, give their measurement and their whole, the person can kind of see what their size and fitting and all that, and they can prepare, like, so each Jaipur foot is custom made for the person. That is a very, very important thing, because even if you buy a very costly prosthetic, a lot of times it's not like custom made for you, right? It's still like you have to pick from a size, and no matter how close that size may be to your size, it's not, cut to fit like that, right? So that is why they don't fit a lot of times, and then the people kind of, they may get sores, they may have other types of pain, or they may have other problems. So with the Jaipur foot, they're able to like make the cast and make the a whole thing, so it's just sort of like a snug fit that the person who's using it has a maximum amount of comfort, to the point that they can even work in the fields, they can, they can have a normal life basically, right? So that was the third thing which they completely revolutionized, that, in the morning you come and you get yourself checked, give the measurements, and by evening you're already leaving with a prosthetic, right? That streamlining the process so much and making it so fast that uh, you're done in one day, right? That sort of a thing. So that was the third thing. So of course there were many things, many little um, granular details in the whole design and the design process, from how they fix one hinge to how they pour the material to what materials they use. All of those things are very important, but the basic philosophy, uh, of this module at least is that you design for an audience or a target consumer, keeping all their constraints in mind, not just the physical constraints. Then we talked about this user-centered helmet design, where Professor Chakravarti basically in this particular part, still module 1 only, but in this part of the module, I think Professor Chakravarti has actually given that roadmap, that basic framework or that basic flow methodology, whatever you want to call it, for how anyone can start and continue and end and finish a product design. So he's given the whole journey from start to finish for a product design. And what is design thinking, how do you use it, what kind of user data should you collect, how should you collect it, whether you should talk to people or observe them, or what kind of user research should you be doing, what should go into your design requirements or considerations, how do you start prototyping, how do you start coming up with ideas, how you sort of club ideas to make a concept, then how do you pick between concepts. He's given that entire roadmap which anybody will follow, which we broadly call as design thinking. And he's taken that, illustrated that with the help of a case study of that user-centered helmet design. So this part of the module is like really helpful if you're just doing like product design maybe for the first time, right? If you are, or if you've only seen product design in theory, like if you've just read about design thinking and you're not really sure how to start, where to start, then this part, this helmet design problem, that is, it will give you the complete flow of how do you go about designing a new product. And in this, he's actually taken this example, which was an exercise for the design students at IIT Bombay, I think. And you can see how the students come up with the problems and how they identify a user need, and then they design for that particular user need, and how they come up with their solutions basically. So this is this kind of explains that part. So this was week 1. Let's go to week 2. So in week 2 was again a very interesting social innovation, which is that solar lights, solar panel lights, reading lights. And you may think, what's the big deal? It's just a solar powered reading light, right? But that social innovation has changed the lives of more than 1 million users. Can you imagine? Reaching 1 million users. Reaching 1 million users means reaching at least around 1 million families. Even if you assume 2-3 students, children in one family, still at least it's reached 500,000 families. And at the very beginning, at the very beginning of this particular module, he gives a reason for why he chose a reading light and not like a light for working in the fields, or not a light for cooking or something. Because for at least to a very great extent, if you want to lift somebody out of poverty, at least out of economically weak existing conditions, they need an education, they need basic reading, writing, verbal skills, right? And they can also get on the job training, they can get specialized training, or they can continue to get a higher education and things like that. But everybody needs at least basic education to be able to do well. Even if you don't go and get a job in the city, even if you just have to work in the fields, for example, even then you can do your job better if you have education till class 10, class 12 at least, right? And unfortunately, because that's just how it is in rural areas, many times that suffers. The education of kids suffers because there's like always work to do, and there are only so many people to work. So not everybody can hire labor. And if you want to eat, you have to work. So children are not always free in the daytime to study. That's the main issue. Even if they go to school, this still the time they're not in school, they have to do some sort of a work, whether it is household chores or just um, watching your younger sisters and brothers, something. So which is why that importance of a reading light which they can use to study after sunset is very important. And of course, in many places in India, like in the winter season and all that, sunset is very early. So that basically takes away your 12 hours almost of reading. So this light was meant to empower the children, the kids who are like probably already in schools but who are not spending any time studying. So just putting a child in school alone is not enough to make him or her study. Like, all those people who are parents will know that. And just putting a kid in school is not any guarantee of them studying. You actually have to make them study. You have to give them proper environment to study, right? And his innovation was intended. I mean, it looked like an ambitious idea at that time, and he says so that it was intended to change the way people, go about their daily lives, because if they didn't have that reading light, they wouldn't study, and then that will affect their future. So, in some sense, this innovation of a reading light was meant to um, actually empower the kids and help them study. So, the innovation itself was not that much on the technological side, but more on the implementation side. Because as we already discussed in that module, that solar panels and solar lamps already existed in the market. So it was not new in the sense that it was not some new concept or some new idea. The novelty was in fine tuning and refining the design so much that it actually is completely tailor made for the needs of that specific audience, which is children who are studying in rural setting at night. So just give me one moment. Yes. So, like I was saying, the main the main beauty of this design was not just in coming up with some new earth-shattering idea, but with taking a product which sort of already exists in the market, which could potentially fulfill the needs of these kids, these children, school-going children in rural areas, and then trying to analyze and understand why is that existing product not fulfilling their needs? Why is that product not sort of working for them? Then trying to see, the demand side, the supply side, and why is that sort of what we call as product market fit? Why is that not working? And then basis that, trying to change not just the product itself, but trying to change the the whole way that product is launched into the market and the way it's implemented and even manufactured. Because in this case, it wasn't just the fact that they changed the way the product was designed, or they changed the way the product was manufactured and the way the product was sold. And of course, they brought down the price of the product and all of that. So they changed practically everything from the existing setup, and that is something which is very, very, is very amazing about this whole design. One. Okay. Right. So script. Yeah. So you can see some of the questions here. See this question here about why, what is the meaning of localization of a solution? This is like one of the important points here. Why was the price of the lamp low? Um, what was, of course, these are some basic questions, but some of these key factors of this design are kind of important in this particular module. So this is a like module of a social innovation where the product, they take an existing product and they completely change it from, they reduce the wattage of the light, they change the way the light bends and the kind of the parts which go into it. It's all like, like modular. And the fact that we don't require much training to assemble it, so that even local people in that same village can actually build it. So they change the whole local economy, and then the local people themselves sell it. So they change the way the product is sold and made accessible and available to the masses. And of course, they train the local people, so they're actually generating jobs for the local people. They're not just giving them a product, they're generating an entire sort of economic backbone for that village, for those villages where this product was launched. So they got some government backing also for the project. And so you can go into the details, but the basic core reason why this module is a really cool innovation, it's a really cool design study, is because of these reasons which I just recounted. So in week 3, we were a bit more on the technology side of things. So we studied how, like, about all the different types of machining and micro machining and things like that. And for those of you who are coming more from the industry, from the mechanical engineering, maybe from those kind of chemical engineering, those kind of backgrounds, you will probably be able to find a lot of interesting ideas in this particular module, because he explains how they change the whole technological process for how you do something, right, in this particular module. And how, they didn't have the whole, all the fancy equipment and things, and how they made use of existing machines for their some of their requirements and things like that. So this module, I'm not going to go too much into detail because it's fairly technical, but at least you should know the basic key ideas which he discusses. So of course, one of them is the total knee prosthesis. And then he talks about the design process and some of the technicalities about that, and why you use one metal, why you don't use, things like that. So this is all the technical part about that. And then he talks about this micro machining basically. And yeah, so these are some of the questions more on the technical side, but he also talks a lot about how he came up with ideas for doing some of these things, which I think you should kind of uh, pay attention to. Okay, where are we now? Okay, we were on week 4, right? So let's go to week 4 assignment. So in week 4, I think Professor Chakravarti takes up 2-3 examples. One was that a hero bicycle, and which was again a really, really interesting case study. Then there was, I think, that bike. Was it in this module? Yeah, I think it was, but I'm not seeing a question on it. Anyway, so this hero bicycle design was a really cool idea, because this was where he talks about that deep drawn metals and using changing the structure of a bicycle so it is cheaper and it moves faster and things like that. So he talks about some of those things in this particular module, and this is like a really interesting case study again in how you can use design processes, technologies from other industries. So in this, they were talking about designing a bicycle, but they took some of the technology from the automobile industry, and there that those materials, those technological processes and all are like pretty standard. So that technology had already matured in a different industry. We just kind of imported it from that industry into this industry. So this was, I think, pretty much about that. And just like, just giving an overview of uh, what we've done in this particular course so far. So week 4 is again a really good place to go, the module 4. I'm trying to find out what is unique about each module so that, it answers that question which many people have, that, in each module we're talking about different types of design, and we're again giving a new design philosophy. So, which one do we pick? So module 4 is basically very cool for trying to see how you can mix and match technologies and how you can completely rethink the design for something you might be using every day. So bicycle is like, we sort of take it for granted that aisa hi hota hai, that kind of a thing. This is how bicycle is. But they redesign and they rethink the basic structure of bicycle, right? Okay, let's go to week 5. Week 5 was like really interesting week by Professor Anil Gupta. And he talks about something completely different. So week 5 is about something entirely different, which is that his work was about, he talks about a whole lot of things which are all very inspiring. But if I'm just, if I'm to just cull out just a few of the key points from this week, I would say that one of the things he says is that we have gotten so used to bad designs everywhere that we don't even think about it anymore. We just sort of ignore it or get on with it, and we don't think about doing better. Somehow we have started to believe that we don't deserve a better design, so we don't even, we don't no longer even question if we are given a bad design. We just think that okay, aise hi hota hai, and we just keep using it, especially in legacy designs, like things which we have been using for a long time. We are like, it's fine, this is just how it is, and we get on with it. But that's not how it should be. As designers, you should think about what can we do to say improve a design, or to do better of everyday things, everyday objects which we use everywhere. And I mean, I'm sure all of us can think of if we really get down to it, everybody can think of at least five things they encounter, they use, they're forced to use every day, which can be designed a whole lot better. So he talks first of all about the need for good design. Secondly, he talked about his shodhyatras and things where his main you can say the main philosophy or the main crux of his lecture is that he talks about how there is so much innovation in people who are coming from really economically weak backgrounds, and for them innovation is their life. For us innovation is a privilege, for them innovation is their way of life. That's sort of like how he captures it. I mean, of course I'm not talking verbatim, I'm just trying to you know um, rephrase what he's saying and just taking a few of the things he says. He says a whole lot of things. I don't think there's any point in my repeating all of that. I'm just trying to highlight some of the things he says. That that he says that, sorry, I just lost it in a minute. Yeah, he says something like people on the margin are not marginal. And what he means by that is that, just because they're living on the fringes, this because they're living on the margins, doesn't mean they are in any way less innovative or intelligent compared to us. So he takes a whole lot of examples of innovations in rural areas and so much of knowledge and creativity in the people living in rural areas. And he created, I think, a platform where he is trying to take those designs and innovations by people and supporting them, finding support for those. So that's his work, but his philosophy and what he talks about is completely pertinent to everybody, irrespective of what type of design you want to do. I think everybody can benefit from that lecture where he is completely inspiring in his philosophy, in his way he says when that when he talks about that upload download ratio, and he talks about how much are you sharing versus how much are you consuming. And if you're not sharing, you're not consuming, then you're basically just not even neither contributing, not even growing. But if you're just consuming, you should think about why are you not sharing with people, because it takes people are afraid of judgment, of feedback. And but he says that it's only feedback which can actually improve your designs, because you get an idea from other people on what is good, what is bad in your design. And if they are going to be your users, then it might be useful for you to get that feedback. So there are many such things he talks about, but um, this is the broad summary of what he says. So this is module 5. Let's go to module 6. Okay, this is biomedical innovations by Professor Ravi, and he gives his own methodology, because he talks about his lab and everything, and he talks about who he takes as the stakeholders for his designs, and why he takes them as stakeholders. And they have a medical device innovation team, so how do they go about it, who contributes to what, and who is involved in what stage of it. So this is a really good module where you can get a really good idea of the workflow somebody needs to follow if you're creating medtech devices or some kind of biomedical uh, innovation design, whatever. So again, I'm not going into the details of it, but he gives this whole workflow. He shares this entire workflow of his teams, and he shares who he takes as stakeholders, and then he explains why he takes them as stakeholders. And he talks about who are the people you should take in your teams. I mean, this is more specific to biomedical devices. And yeah, he talks about how you address the market side of things, because that is eventually the asset test, the litmus test of a product design. Is it able to survive in the market? So, okay, so this was, I think, week 6. Let's go to week 7. So, week 7, we had Professor Amarish Chakrabarti, and he talked about, you know, all these sickle, purak, all these. He talks about a different type of approach. He gives a lot of explanation for how to make sure that your product is successful in the market. So this module is actually, he talks about overall design methodology also, but one of the key learnings from this particular module is how all the ways in which your product and your design can be extremely good and yet not survive in the market, and why you need to sort of foresee that, plan for that, and why you need to not fall into one of those valleys of death for your own product. So see, many of the things we discuss in all these modules is not just good design, but also like some of the good designs which did not succeed, and that is kind of just as big, just as important a takeaway, just as important a learning for any designer as to all the ways in which a design can potentially fail, because it's not necessary that you have to fail. You can also learn from others' failure to make sure that your failure is less damaging or less late in your design process. Okay. So he talked about this cotton picking device, and he talked about that link rods and stuff. Yet I'm not going too much into the purak arm and all those things. Those are more detailed side. I'm just trying to capture the overall idea and philosophy, which brings us to week 8. Now, week 8 was mainly about the smart cane, and Professor Rao talks about design for the disabled. So I would say that week 8 is the ideal place to understand how to design for somebody with a disability or with some kind of a special need. So this, because designing for them, somehow we kind of tend to misunderstand many of the requirements, or we fail to understand some of the requirements, which is very, very important, because it requires empathizing, or it requires understanding on a different level. When I say empathizing, I don't mean in just the emotional way. Empathy is, most people misunderstand the word empathy as something emotional. It's not emotional alone. It can be emotional also, but empathy means trying to really understand the person, the user, or your target audience. So that's why in design thinking, that whole process, you have something called empathy study. Right? Empathy study does not mean that you sit and sympathize with the person. Empathy study is where you're trying to understand the pain points of a consumer. You're trying to understand the aspirations of the consumer. You're trying to understand what they actually want and what they don't want, what they like, what they don't like. So there are many things on which we may not realize, but we have some unconscious assumptions about the other person. And um, this is, of course, not just in the case of disability. It happens even in, even in other types of situations, even in life, and of course in other types of design also. But when you're designing for somebody who uses a computer, there are many times you will be in a much better position to empathize with a person who uses a computer, because you also use a computer. So you can very quickly understand why they have a problem, right? But when you're trying to understand somebody who has a disability of some sort, like in this particular case study, we take the example of um, people who are blind. It's for a person who is blind, that they sort of perceive the world in a different way, right? It's not just that they're not able to see, that is the condition. Their lives are lived in a different way. They perceive things, they form ideas, they form understanding, they form judgments about situations, about people. The decision making process is different from ours, right? And that you cannot understand from just half an hour or 1 hour of, say, user research. You need like a user research immersion on a whole different level. And that is one of the most important takeaways, according to me at least, for this particular week. That immersion is the key in designing something for somebody with a disability. And see, this was sort of there in 2 3 features which they wanted to or did not want to add in the smart cane, which was that one of them was they wanted to give audio feedback in the in that attachment, that contraption. And they realized, they didn't think that it might be a problem, but they sort of got the feedback from the potential users that they didn't want that. They were like, we don't want to draw attention of the masses to the fact that we are actually disabled. It's an unpleasant situation to be in, and a person who has never been in a situation like that will not be able to understand the thinking of that person. To have trouble walking, and you know I'm it may be noticeable that I'm having trouble walking, but I don't want somebody to scream and shout on the top of their voices that, look, she can't walk, right? It's embarrassing. It's a bit weird. Which similarly, if you put something like a loud audio alarm or buzzer or something on a cane, suddenly, like, they will feel like bulls in Spanish arena kind of a feeling, like, everybody is looking at them. It's not desirable, that situation. And see, the thing is, a lot of times we misunderstand disability itself. Like, we don't understand that that person may have the same types of hopes and aspirations with us in spite of the disability. We somehow assume that their hopes, their aspirations are going to be lesser than us. It's not always true. And this is where what they understand when they realize that, they were thinking of not giving color options in the smart cane. And the person asked that, when you buy a shirt, do you look at the color of it just because you like looking at it, or because you like, you want to make a statement to other people who look at it, right? So how you dress up, just as an example, because that's the example they gave in the module, that how you dress up is not just because you like it that way. You may like it that way also, but you're also in a way making a statement about yourself to other people. And that is kind of a part of your thinking, your decision making process. And they were not taking that into consideration. And that's when these people sort of give them a wake up call that, why are you assuming that the color of the cane is not important to us just because we can't see it, right? So, of course, uh, those are the kind of um, surprise understandings you would find in some design of this sort. And that is, then of course he goes through the whole prototype and things like that. I'm not going into that, but This is sort of like the basic point of this particular module. Okay, so this is so far at least the overview of all the weeks. I'm okay. I haven't discussed week 8, so let me just quickly go with that also. So question number 1. What percentage of the world does not have blind friendly environment? As per Professor Rao. So this is 90%. You can actually even estimate this on your own if you have any idea of what barrier-free architecture is like, and such few places actually have barrier-free architecture. And blind friendly. Barrier free is also sort of not, it doesn't always include blind friendly. So blind friendly would be even lesser than barrier free architecture. Second question, why did the first prototype of smart cane by computer students was not up to the mark despite the brilliant software programming abilities? And this was because the students could not work on the center of gravity. And wait a minute, are we on the right question? Yeah, because they could not work on the center of gravity and other physical attributes, and they lacked the material knowledge. So this is like straight out of the slides. I'm not discussing this much. It's not like a whole lot to explain here. Uh, which question 3? Which among the following best fits the definition of customers and users? So you have a lot of options here, but basically the main difference between customer and user is the entity which is sort of paying for the product is the customer, and the entity, as in the person who is going to use the product, is the user. That's that is the definition, so to say. So in our case, government is the customer for the smart cane, whereas people with visual impairment are the users, right? Which, as I said, then social media influencers are the customers, advertisement companies who pay for ads are users, or second, social media influencers are the users, and advertisement companies who pay for ads are customers. So who is paying? Advertisement companies are paying, right? So they are the customers. So the person who pays is the customer, and the person who uses social media influencers are just using social media. So they are, of course, the users, right? It should not be very hard to understand. Oh, sorry. Other than the usability issues associated with the foreign products designed for mobility of the visually impaired people, why were they being discarded? Second, I mean, there's no real uh, confusion in this answer. Problem is they were super expensive because the people who were blind, he was explaining how they are not able to, you don't, a lot of times they don't even have like 300 rupees to buy a cane, right? They're that financially challenged. But the the imported products were like $1,000 or something like that. So sorry, for a person who's not able to spend $5, you're trying to sell him something which costs $1,000. It's obviously not going to work, right? Question number 5: which attribute is true for this smart cane? And the options are: it is purse friendly but not detachable. It is a standard part attached to any cane and has 5 folds, making it compact. Third option is it is a standard part attached to any cane and has four folds, making it compact. Fourth is it is a single product piece and cannot be folded. Now, if you have gone through the material, you will know that it is a standard part which is attached to a cane. So the smart cane is not a separate cane. It is just it's something which kind of gets attached onto the existing white cane, which uh, the people generally use. And if you remember, there is a part in the video where he talks about they were trying to decide between four folds and five folds, and there was this part where they kind of take the discussion to the users and they ask them whether they want four folds or five folds and which is good for them. And it's mainly the women who explain that having five folds is easier for them because then the cane can kind of fit into their purse. Otherwise, it does not fit into their purse. That is kind of why they decided to make it five folds. Somebody should redesign this wrist brace. I'm having trouble tying it properly around the wrist. It wants to go everywhere other than the wrist. Uh, okay, yeah, this is the brace I'm talking about. Somebody should try to redesign this. The softer material perhaps, and just Velcro which can stick anywhere instead of just one part. So see, this part is just Velcro. I hope somebody can redesign this so the entire thing is Velcro. So you're not stuck with just sticking it here. You could stick it here or you could stick it here. It's not very difficult to do actually. You just need the right material for it. This material is sort of it's stretchable, which is good, but it's not that soft. So I don't know. Maybe yeah, you don't need this to be so stiff. All I want is a little bit of compression for the wrist, which is injured. So if this is a bit softer, sort of like the crepe bandage kind of material, then it would work. Thicker than crepe bandage, but less stiff than this one. And this is one of the best brands, so who am I to complain? But yeah, it's very difficult to because when you're trying your drag around a wrist, you have the use of only one hand, and it's difficult to sort of wear it with one hand. Anyway, this is just a detour. Question number 6. This was the important question which I was talking about, whether the color of the smart cane was important to the users or not. And it was important, right? That was the whole point. Question number 7. Why does selling a smart cane on e-commerce websites not make much difference? And that is because the people who are actually buying or who are actually not buying, but who are actually using the smart cane or who would be uh, potential users for the smart cane, they are not buying it on e-commerce. They're not going to e-commerce sites to buy these canes. And that is because, firstly, they are coming from a financially weak background. Secondly, these e-commerce websites, if somebody is blind, how would they use it, right? You have to think about like it's the same thing as something like this wrist arm. I'm putting it on, but I don't have two hands to tie it. It's easy to do it if you're able to tie it with two hands, but my one hand is already injured, so I have to tie it with the one hand. This thing needs to be designed in a way that it's easy to tie with one hand. The same kind of a problem, a person who is blind, how do you expect them to use an e-commerce website which is not blind friendly, right? So how will they uh, but that is also a secondary thing. I mean, that I'm sure that is also a constraint for them, but they don't they have the money in the first place to buy from e-commerce websites, right? And so by the way, there are kind of phones which people use even if you are blind, but in this case they are coming from poor backgrounds. Okay. question, which question will be on? Question 8. Yeah. Why was an ultrasonic sensor used instead of proximity? The options are: it gives an analogous signal to easily determine distances. Second is it gives a digital positive negative to prevent collision. Third is it is affordable. Fourth is it makes the product sell better due to the terms. So this is there in the video itself. That it gives an analogous signal to determine distances, and he's explained about how they determine distances with the ultrasonic thing. Question number 9. The novel feature of the smart cane is usage of ultrasound to detect obstacles, usage of laser to detect obstacles, um, detection of objects above a certain height only, and detection of manholes. So again, this is just there from the latter part of the video where he talks about detection of objects above a certain height only, because which is why they also sort of don't recommend it in hilly areas and all that, because the terrain is changing too much too quickly, and the smart cane may not function very well over there. So this is the answer, and he's explained the reason why they use it like that. That the kind of make a trade-off between resolution and distance. Last question. What is the problem with the waterproof cane during the rain? So they wanted to waterproof it also. And the answers are, options are: it will start beeping as it detects raindrops as objects. Second is it will fail after a while. Fourth is it will have leakage due to heavy rainfall. And sorry, third is, and fourth is it will become inactive. So the problem with the waterproof cane is that it will take raindrops as objects, because if it is not, it's going to treat water as sort of uh, a foreign body, a foreign object, right? So that is the answer. Okay, so we'll just take a 5-10 minute break here, and then we will continue with some more practice questions from the course. So I'll be back in just 5-10 minutes. Okay, so let's go over some of the review questions, and these answers are already actually with you, because most of these questions I have actually taken from the practice problems I have shared earlier. So and I've given solutions for all the previous practice problem sets. So you can refer to those. I've not uploaded separate solutions. I've tweaked some of the questions in some places, but I think that is um, fairly. That's not a very major change. Okay, so the first question is, why is it called the honey bee network, by Professor Anil Gupta? Now, most of your questions, at least I'm expecting that most of the questions which you get in your final exam will have the full context. Here, just to save a little bit of time and unnecessary wording, I have not written out like the entire question and the entire context of the questions, but most of the times you will actually have the entire context of which module and which professor we're talking about, and which particular design or case study we are talking about, right? So uh, because I've anyways already just gone over all the different modules, this is still kind of fresh in our memories, so I'm not spending a whole lot of time giving the context. Okay, so the honeybee network is the name of the the organization which Professor Gupta has started. So why does he call it that? He gives a whole reasoning for it, and it kind of captures his basic philosophy, design philosophy, and innovation, grassroots innovation philosophy. Um, Sorry, just give me one. Okay, so why does he call it that? Why does he call it the honeybee network? Firstly, he talks about the asymmetry between the person who is actually uh, you know providing and producing the knowledge, and he gives the example of the difference between the researchers and the people they survey, right? And he talks about how researchers at least sort of get to be co-authors in research publications. They have research papers and patents in their names. They have, they can build their profiles, academic profiles, and things like that based on the research they have produced. But the people who they survey, the people whose inputs they take, they don't actually get sort of anything, right? They don't actually get. Now, most of the times they don't get compensated, but even other than that, they don't actually get any form of credit for the kind of knowledge they produce, the kind of knowledge they help us with as researchers. So that is the asymmetry he is talking about. And they're trying to kind of bridge that gap. So that is sort of like, what a honeybee does is it kind of sort of, um, takes the pollen from one flower and puts it in another flower, right? So in that sense, it's sort of trying to bridge and invisible kind of a gap or a metaphorical gap. So that is one of the reasons why he calls it the honeybee network. And of course, it involves sharing with others because the honeybee network is about taking others' ideas and popularizing them, on making sure that they're taken up or they become successful. So that is the second part. The third option is sort of like a very tempting type of option, but it's not actually correct, because the idea is not just to create a large spread out network, but rather connecting people. So the whole idea of a large spread out network is not actually the reason why he calls it the honeybee network. The reason he calls it that is because he's actually helping connect people who come up with innovations with the right way to enable and popularize their innovations. Okay. So the fourth part is it involves cross-pollination of ideas. So, well, I was just talking about pollination. So here we're also talking about cross-pollination of ideas, not just the credit, not just the appreciation or recognition. We're talking about cross-pollination of ideas, and his network actually, if you read some of the material on the website for the Honeybee Network and the Shodh Yatra and everyone, you'll actually see that the whole the whole network is actually enabling the cross pollination of ideas, because they connect people from, say, one community with people from maybe another community who may have a same kind of problem, but they have not been able to solve it very well, whereas people from one community have um, come up with their own solutions. And because they're not like connected over space time whatever, they don't know that a solution for it already exists, and this happens very often, especially in rural areas. So they give that kind of a connectivity and that kind of a network where one community or one um, set of people in one village maybe can actually have a way to connect with people from other places who may have similar problems or similar knowledge gaps and things like that. So cross pollination of ideas refers to that aspect of his network. Okay. Second is, why did the inventors of or innovators of the smart cane not want to use audio feedback? This we actually just discussed, so I'm going to skip this one. Okay. The third part is, what is the meaning of autopoiesis as explained by Professor Anil Gupta in his lecture? Okay, so this is a very interesting and very unique thing which he talks about in his lecture, and he has actually explained it very well. I will try to explain it on my own. Let's go to the options. The first is the capacity to design something that is repairable. Second is the capacity to reduce the failure at time of at okay, there should be time of design. I think there's a typo. Third is the capacity to redesign itself during the process of use. Fourth is the capacity of use of process at time of design. Fifth is the capacity to self-correct and improve efficiency while being used. Now we're talking in the context of a product, right? Autopoiesis is a natural phenomena, but he uses it like metaphorically for a particular product which you may have designed. And he explains it as giving the example of a tree, if you remember correctly, that there is a tree which had, you know, bent at a very low angle or something like that, and then it was growing, and then, you know, after some time, the tree sort of corrected its own angle in which it should be growing, and it took a turn around and it sort of reached the right height and angle eventually. So he gives that as an example of autopoiesis, and it's a very interesting example because you see what he's trying to explain is how while the tree is growing, it is also correcting its course or correcting its trajectory, how it should be growing, in what way it should be growing, at what angle it should be growing, right? It's not just growing in a vacuum, so to say. It's actually um, you know, growing, and at the same time it is correcting and seeing whether its angle of growth is actually correct or not. So that is what he's referring to in the context of the tree. Then we come to the context of a product design. And so there are like examples, for example, certain types of knives. The more you use them, the sharper they become, right? Even in actually, if you see animals, cats, right? They have these claws, and what they do while their whole process of hunting and running and all that, they have this method of scratching and things where they, of course, they kind of they use it to scratch their claws, but they also use it to sharpen their claws. That's how they keep their claws sharp. So once they feel like the claws are not that sharp, they kind of, the claws keep growing, they don't stop growing, but while the claws are still growing, they actually have this habit of scratching on trees and other surfaces, so that it kind of peels off layers of their nails, their claws, and it sort of sharpens the edges, so the claws are very, very sharp. They're like sharper than even needles. And this is something which most carnivorous animals do actually, to keep their claws sharp. Basically, that's why you see their claws, they're like, they're like razor sharp, and they're very smooth. So it's not by accident, they actually keep it that way. And the more they hunt, the more they use, the more they scratch, the sharper they become during the process of use. So, and this is an example I am giving. So this is sort of an example of autopoiesis, where during the process, the usage of that particular part itself makes it better. So the more a cat scratches its claws, the sharper they become. So this is sort of like a mechanism of automatically improving the efficiency of that part in this case. Now, if you extend that metaphor to the process of design, what you get is a product which improves itself and perhaps redesigns itself during the process of being used. While it is still being used, it sort of self-corrects itself, sort of improves its efficiency, improves its, corrects its errors, basically. Right? That is what it means in the context of design, autopoiesis. Otherwise, the word itself is sort of like a biological or a natural phenomena, use like terminology. So in the context of design, it refers to a type of design which can redesign itself, or it can improve its efficiency, or of course correct while it is still being used. That's the important part. It's not it's not that it can correct or get fixed when you give it for repair, or that it can get it fixed for when you when you stop using it and then you do something to it. But while it is still being used, it sort of corrects itself. So in that sense, the correct options are C and E. Okay, question 4. In the hero cycles case study, Uh, why was the deep drawn sheet metal process more cost effective than using pipes in the bicycle? And there are many options here. One is pipes are actually sheets rolled and welded into pipes. So deep drawn sheets do away with the cost of that process. This is correct. Then they build the whole frame in one go. That is also correct. The cost of sheet is lower than that of pipes. This is also correct. Fourth is the deep drawn sheet process uses lesser materials. I think this is also correct. I've forgotten a little bit. I think it is also correct because you use lesser connections because the whole thing is sort of becoming more of a monolith, right? So I think all the options are correct in this, but do check it out once. I know I only created the question paper, but I said this a few days ago, so memory is a bit blurry right now. Next is in 2012, what did Professor Solanki identify as a primary problem with most solar programs? It's an important question. First is the mechanism of buy and sell, then oversupply of panels. Third is lack of consumer interest. Next is competition. And last is all of the above. Now, we've discussed most of these things actually. The main reason was that the consumers were not able to procure the solar panels, lights, etc. in a steady way. So, you can get one model today, but if you go 6 months later, you'll get a different model. You will not be able to get it repaired. There is no maintenance, there is no service center, there is no accessibility to any kind of servicing. So all of those problems can be bundled under the whole problem of the mechanism of buy and sell. That's what they mean by the word mechanism of buy and sell. And the others are actually not true because there was no oversupply. There was sometimes, in fact, a shortage of solar panel lights. Then consumer interest was always there. They always had the requirement. They just didn't have accessibility to the product. And competition with energy sources is not relevant for our case. Question number 6. Why was adding braille to the cane not a good idea? First option is there could be many different brailles depending on the language, and there is no way to decide which one should be used. The second is the braille would need to go into the mold of the product for manufacturing. Next is the braille is a 6 or 8 dot system, but it is different for every language. So unless the person knows which language it is, they can't use the cane properly. And the last is all of the above. Now, if you saw the live session for this particular week, I think it was the week 8 live session. I have explained in that session what braille looks like and why it is different for different languages. So just to give you a very brief, very quick idea. So the braille has the 6 dot system, and those 6 dots carry the meaning, refer to the same sound, or at least very closely correlated sounds in all Indian languages. But the word in each language for the same thing is different. Like the word exit has a different word in Hindi versus Gujarati versus Tamil versus Bengali versus Telugu versus Malayalam, and so on and so forth. So the word exit, for example, in Hindi, I think the word is nikas, right? So the sound na, ka, sa will be represented by the same combination of dots in braille, but that combination of dots will make sense only in Hindi. It will not make sense in other languages, right? The way you write the word in other languages is going to be different. This is important to understand. So that is how Braille works basically. So the constraints were actually all of the above. Firstly, you don't know which language to pick because, you know, producing it in so many languages itself is a problem, and then you don't really know which one you should produce more for, which one should you produce less for, and if you do, like, why only one language for that matter? You're not actually addressing your entire market if you try to produce in only one language. So which language should you choose then? So, that's why Braille was not a good idea. And then it would have to be like, made a part of the mold, which would probably increase the cost, time of production, all of that. And then it is different for every language. So even if you do add Braille on the cane, if by chance the person does not know that language, they'll be in trouble. It'll be meaningless for that person. So the correct answer is all of the above. Next question is, uh, yeah, what makes the Jaipur foot better than imported prosthetic limbs? The answer is option A, it is custom made for each user. Second is it is available for free. Third is it can be used in all types of environments. So I think we've gone over this in the beginning itself of this class. So all of them are correct because it's custom made, it is free, and it can be used in all types of environments. They use the materials which ensure that the person can use it in all environments. I think this is the last question. Yeah. So how did the soul steam is the solar light steam, prevent leakages due to corruption? This is a very interesting question, actually. That's why I kept it. First is by making the lamp accessible to all eligible people in a block within a short period of time. Second is by pricing the lamp at the market rate. Third is by pricing the lamp, by penalizing those involved in corruption and resale. Next is by spreading awareness and advertisements about the availability of the lamp to all. And then you have all of the above and none of the above. Now, with this, I think we come to the close. So this was a very interesting thing they did. Now, the problem with corruption is basically that, if it's a very new product, right? The solar panel light, and they were selling it for very cheap. I think 120 rupees or something. So once you start selling in one village and people don't know that this new lamp is available in that particular village, maybe 50 kilometers away, people in one village can actually buy, like, even if you buy 10 lamps, that is still, like, possible for somebody to buy 10 lamps in that village A, where you have just started selling it, and take those 10 lamps and go to some village B 50 kilometers away and sell it at a premium. So if you buy for 120 rupees and you sell it for, say, 300 rupees, you still make a profit of 180 rupees per lamp, and 180 into 10 is 1800 rupees. It's not a bad profit for somebody. That is the kind of corruption they were trying to check. And even if somebody sells it for, say, 300 rupees in village B, it's not a very unreasonable price because the actual market price for those lamps was around 500 rupees. Like, the cost of manufacturing was 500 rupees. So, for a lamp of that kind to be sold in the market, it would have to be priced at something above 500 rupees. So it was, already very, very subsidized. So if somebody sells it for 300 rupees, people will believe him or her that, 300 is a good price. So, in an entire village B, it's not that difficult to find 10 people who could possibly buy the lamp for 300 rupees. That is the corruption we're talking about. So, a lot of times it may be confusing as to what we mean by corruption here. This is what we mean by corruption, that people can just buy it in one village and sell it in another village where it is not yet available. So, so what they did was, first of all, they didn't do, like, take several months to sell from village A to B to C like that. They manufactured it in very huge quantities and they made it available to all the villages in one block very quickly in a very short period of time. Right? That is one thing they did, which was making sure that it is actually available to all villages in an entire block, so that there is no asymmetry, that it's taking a long time for that technology or for that product to reach from one part of the block to another part of the block. Right. The second thing they did was um, they actually spread a lot of awareness. They did some promotion, advertisement, public awareness campaigns where people were told that it will come to you, you will get the lamp and it will be available, because sometimes people are just afraid that what if they run out. They start selling in those villages. By the time they reach here, maybe the stock is already over, they don't have it anymore. And this happens many times because in rations and all those type of things where something is heavily subsidized, it is not uncommon for something to kind of go out of stock very quickly. So people are kind of used to or trained into that kind of a reasoning or a logic. So when they did these public awareness campaigns that everybody who wants it will get it, and it's going to be made available in your village also, it is not that only a few people will get it or something. So that also helped check those kind of fears about availability of the product, and so that they don't give in to like a black market for it or something like that, right? So that is the second thing they did, and these are the two reasons how they were able to actually check corruption. Okay, so this completes our review questions, and that's pretty much all I have to discuss. I don't know there's any other question, but it was a really good course, and I'm really glad that I was the TA for the live sessions for this particular course. And I totally encourage all of you to use these design principles, these ideas in your jobs, maybe in your independent practices, or even in your everyday life. The principles discussed in this course are actually useful in many areas of business, of life, everywhere. So that's it for this course. I think we complete it here. And this video will be uploaded in that same playlist on the YouTube channel where all the other videos have been uploaded. And if you still have some questions, you can either post in the discussion forum or email me, or you can leave comments on the video. So thank you everybody for who joined the sessions and who watched the videos all through the 8 weeks of the course. And I hope you found it at least a little bit useful, all the live sessions. Thanks a lot for joining.